The clock on the wall says 2:17 a.m. It has been saying that for 3 years, not the real clock, of course. The real clock keeps moving, dragging the world along with it. But the clock inside my head, the one that marks the moment my life ended, is stuck. It is frozen on the second I saw his face on the news. It is the moment the world went from color to gray, from a dream to a nightmare. It is the hour of my death and my rebirth. I am sitting in the dark now. The chair is hard and the air smells like old dust and new fear. Soon the sirens will come. I can almost hear them now, a faint, sad song getting louder down the hill. They will find me here in this quiet room with nothing but a cold cup of coffee and a strange, empty peace. I have waited for this moment. I have planned for it. I have lived for it. My name doesn't matter anymore. It was a good name once, a name that meant smart ideas and clean code. Now it is just a name they will put on a police report. All that matters is what he did and what I did back. The story of Daniel and the ghost. He was Daniel, my best friend, my brother. We were two boys who shared a brain and a dream. We grew up in a small town where the biggest thing was the old water tower. We didn't care about the town. We cared about the screen. We cared about the code. We were always together. In school, we sat next to each other. In the summer, we built forts in the woods, but when we found computers, everything changed. It was like finding a secret world. I was the one who could talk to the machine. I could type words and the computer would do magic. Daniel was the one who could talk to people. He could make them believe in the magic. We started our company in my garage. It was a mess. Pizza boxes piled up like towers. Wires ran everywhere like metal snakes. The smell of old coffee was the air we breathed. We didn't have money for heat or air conditioning. We just had each other and the code. We had a promise we would split everything 50-50 forever. We had one dream, to build something that mattered, something that would change the world. We wanted to be the guys who made the future. And we did. We built it over 2 years of no sleep and endless hope. It wasn't just a simple app. It was a monster, a beautiful, terrible monster called the Oracle. The Oracle was not a toy, it was a weapon. It was the key to the world's vault. I had built it to be the smartest thing on the planet when it came to money. It could look at every single trade, every single stock, every single bank account in the world. It could see the tiny, tiny movements that no human eye could ever catch. It was like having a crystal ball for the stock market. It could tell you exactly where the money was going to be next week, next month, next year. It was so fast, so perfect that it felt like cheating. It was the most complex thing I had ever made, and I loved it like a child. Daniel knew this. He would watch the screen, his eyes wide with a hungry look I didn't understand then. He would say, "This is it, man. This is the key to the kingdom. We are going to be kings." He didn't just want to be rich. He wanted to be powerful. He wanted to move the world. I didn't care about being a king. I just cared about the code. I cared that it worked. I cared that it was perfect. I made sure the Oracle was a silent, perfect machine. I was the engine. Daniel handled the business. He talked to the big, scary people in suits. He told me, "You stay here, brother. You keep building. I'll make sure we get rich." He would pat me on the shoulder and I would believe him. I was happy to be the ghost in the machine, the one who made the magic happen. I believed he had my back. I believed we were in this together. But greed is a poison. It doesn't just change people, it turns them into something else, something cold and hungry. And Daniel was very hungry. The truth was darker than a simple desire for a new suit. It was about fear. Daniel had a secret. A big, ugly secret he kept locked away. He had borrowed money, a lot of money, from the wrong kind of people. These were not bank people. These were people who wore dark suits and had cold eyes. They didn't care about business plans. They cared about their money. They were called the syndicate. 6 months before the Oracle was ready, Daniel got greedy. He took a huge amount of their money and tried to use an early, buggy version of the Oracle to make a quick profit. He thought he was smarter than the machine. He failed. He lost everything. He lost their money and he lost his chance to be free. He didn't need $50 million to get rich. He needed $50 million to stay alive. The bad men had given him a deadline, and the deadline was coming fast. They had shown him what they would do if he didn't pay. It was a picture of a man who was no longer whole. He looked at our software, our dream, and he saw a lifeboat, and he decided there was only room for one person. If I was part of the deal, I would get half the money, and half was not enough to pay off his debt and keep his new, fancy life. He needed it all. He needed to disappear into the money. So he made a choice. He erased me. But this time, he didn't just trick me with a paper. He made me crazy. It started small. I would work on a line of code, perfect it, and save it. The next morning it would be wrong, a tiny mistake, a single number out of place. I would fix it, thinking I was just tired, but it kept happening. I started to doubt myself. I, the man who could make a computer sing, was making stupid mistakes. I would check the code 10 times, save it, and then find the error again. I started to think I was losing my mind. Daniel was always there. "You need rest, man," he would say, his voice full of fake worry. "You've been working too hard, the code is getting to you." He was the one doing it. While I slept, he would sneak into the garage and change one line of code, a line so small, so hidden that it would only cause a problem once a week. He was planting seeds of doubt in my brain. He was making me believe I was broken. He started telling our few friends that I was unwell, that I was seeing things in the code. He was building a story about me, a story where I was the crazy one who couldn't handle the pressure. He was isolating me. Then came the paper. He used a special clause in the papers we signed when we first started. A clause that said if one partner left the company for any reason, the other partner got full control. Daniel had a lawyer trick me into signing a paper that said I was taking a long-term leave of absence to focus on personal health. I was so tired, I was so confused, I truly believed I was losing my mind. I signed the paper thinking I was doing the right thing for the company. I trusted him, I thought he was saving me. That was the moment I realized the betrayal was not just about greed, it was about fear and murder. He murdered my life and my mind to save his own. He looked at me, his best friend, and decided I was worth less than his own skin. The morning it happened, I woke up late. I had been up for 48 hours straight trying to find a ghost bug that wasn't even there. I walked into the kitchen, tired but happy. I turned on the old TV to catch the weather. And there he was. Daniel, standing next to a man in a suit who looked like he owned the world. The man was Mr. Silas, a shark with a smile. They were shaking hands. The news ticker at the bottom of the screen read, "Tech genius Daniel Thorne sells revolutionary trading software for $50 million. My coffee cup hit the floor. The sound was small, but it felt like a bomb. The hot coffee burned my feet, but I didn't feel it. I couldn't feel anything but a cold, heavy weight in my chest. The reporter was talking about Daniel's vision and his solo genius. They called him a self-made man. They said he built it all in his small, quiet lab. They never said garage. They never said my. They never said we. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was watching my own funeral. My whole life, my whole dream was being sold on TV. I ran to my computer, my hands shaking so hard I could barely type. I checked the company accounts. Empty. I checked the legal papers. My name was gone, wiped clean. It was as if I had never existed. The paper I signed was the knife in my back. Then an email popped up. It was from Daniel's new, fancy work address. I opened it. It was short, just one line. "It's nothing personal, just business." I read it again and again. The words were cold like ice. They were a lie. It was the most personal thing he could have done. He had taken my life and my mind and called it a business deal. That was the last time I cried. The tears were hot and fast, but they stopped. They dried up, and in their place a cold, hard thing started to grow. It wasn't sadness. It was a plan. It was a promise to myself. I stopped being the quiet coder. I became the ghost, the one who watches, the one who waits. Daniel had taken my dream, my money, and my name. Now I would take his life. Not his breath, but everything he cared about. I would make him feel the same cold, empty feeling I had at 2:17 a.m. The game had changed. It was no longer about building. It was about burning, and I was going to be the architect of the fire. I spent the next few months in a fog. I lost the garage. I lost my savings. I was nothing. I watched Daniel on TV smiling, talking about his vision. He bought a huge mansion on the hill, a glass house that looked down on the whole city. He married a beautiful woman, a model named Clara, a perfect life built on the ashes of mine. Every time I saw his face, the cold thing inside me grew stronger. It was a new kind of hunger, not for money but for justice. A dark, terrible justice that only I could give. I had to be smarter than him. I had to be quieter. I started my new life in a tiny, dark apartment. It was on the 10th floor of a building with no elevator. I bought a cheap, old computer. I didn't look for a job. I only had one job now, Daniel. I started studying him, not just his public life but the shadows. I used the skills I had used to build the Oracle, but for a new purpose. I became a digital detective. I learned that his new company, the one he started with Mr. Silas's money, was a dirty mess. They were using the Oracle to cheat people, to steal from small investors, and to hide huge amounts of money in secret bank accounts far away. He was lying to his investors. He was cheating on his wife, Clara, with his secretary. All secrets waiting to burn. I didn't want to just send a report to the police. That would be too fast, too clean. He would hire a fancy lawyer and be back on TV in a year. I wanted him to feel the slow, cold burn of losing everything. I wanted him to watch his perfect life turn to dust. So I built my own monster. I called it Ashes. Ashes was the opposite of the Oracle. The Oracle was built to find money. Ashes was built to make it disappear. It was a simple piece of code, small and quiet. It didn't make a big noise. It was designed to crawl through Daniel's company servers like a tiny, hungry worm. It had two jobs. First, it would find all the hidden money, the secret accounts, and the illegal trades. It would not steal the money. No, it would simply erase the records. It would make the money look like it was never there. This would make the banks and the government think Daniel was a thief who had lost everything. Second, and this was the dark part, Ashes would find all the secrets I had uncovered, the emails about cheating, the papers about lying to investors, the secret deals with Mr. Silas. And it would not just erase them. It would leak them. It would send them to the news, to the police, to his wife, to everyone. I wanted him to be destroyed from the outside and the inside. I spent 6 months building Ashes. It was the best code I had ever written. It was perfect. It was deadly. I tested it on old, fake bank accounts. It worked every time. It was a ghost that left no trace. When it was finally ready, I sat back in my dark apartment. I looked at the clock. It was 1:00 a.m. I had an hour and 17 minutes until the moment. I sent the email. It was a ghost email, untraceable, unreadable. It went straight to Daniel's personal account. Just one sentence. Do you still think it's nothing personal? Then I launched Ashes. The next few weeks were the best and worst of my life. I watched the news like a hawk. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat much. I just watched Daniel's perfect world start to crack. The first thing to go was the money. Ashes was a silent killer. It didn't crash the servers all at once. It worked slowly, making tiny, tiny changes to the numbers. One day, a bank account had $10 million. The next day, it had $10,000. The day after that, it was gone. Daniel and his team thought it was a mistake, a glitch. They spent days trying to fix it, but Ashes was too smart. It was always one step ahead. Every time they fixed one number, Ashes changed 10 more. The investors started to worry. They called Daniel. "Where is the money?" they asked. Daniel, the great talker, had no answer. He looked pale and scared on the phone. Then the second part of Ashes started to work, the leaks. The first story was about the company's fake profits. A small, honest-looking news website suddenly had all the papers showing Daniel was lying to his investors. The story was so detailed, so full of facts that no one could say it was false. The next day, the big news channels picked it up. They showed Daniel's face, but this time he wasn't smiling. He looked like a deer caught in the headlights. The police started asking questions. The government started an investigation. But the real deep cut came from his personal life. One morning, a huge, fancy car pulled up to Daniel's mansion. It was Clara. His beautiful wife. She didn't even go inside. She just stood on the lawn holding a stack of papers. Ashes had sent her the emails, the ones about the secretary, the ones about the expensive gifts, the ones that proved Daniel was a liar in his marriage too. I watched from a safe distance, sitting in a rented car with dark windows. I saw Clara throw the papers at Daniel's feet. I saw her scream words I couldn't hear, but I knew what they meant. She got back in her car and drove away, leaving Daniel alone on the perfect green lawn of his perfect glass house. He dropped to his knees. He put his head in his hands. That was the moment I knew I had won. He had lost his money, his company, and his wife. Everything he had built on my broken life was now broken too. But I wasn't done. I wanted the final act. I wanted him to know who did it. I wanted him to know that the ghost he thought he had buried was standing right over his grave. I waited a few more days. The news was full of Daniel's shame. They called him a fraud, a thief, a terrible husband. His name was Mud. I knew he would be alone in that big, empty house. The police had taken his computers. His phones were probably tapped. He had nowhere to go. I drove up the hill late one night. The mansion was dark except for a single light in the living room. It was raining, a cold, thin rain that matched the feeling in my heart. I wore all black. I didn't need a mask. He wouldn't recognize me. The man he knew was gone. The man standing on his porch was a shadow. I walked up to the huge, fancy door. I didn't ring the bell. I just knocked, 3 slow, hard knocks. The door opened slowly. Daniel stood there. He was not the man on TV. He was thin. His expensive suit was wrinkled. His eyes were red and empty like 2 burned-out coals. He looked 10 years older than he was. He looked right at me, but he didn't see me. "Who are you?" he asked. His voice was a dry whisper like leaves in the wind. I smiled. It was a cold, terrible smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I'm the ghost of what you stole," I said. Daniel's eyes finally focused. They went wide, then narrow, then wide again, like a camera trying to find the right picture. He was searching my face for the boy he knew, the quiet coder who trusted him. He couldn't find him. "No," he breathed, "it can't be yours. You're gone." I said. "You made sure of that. You signed the papers. You sent the email. You killed me at 2:17 a.m. He took a shaky step back, letting me into the huge, cold hallway. The house was too big for one scared man. It felt like a museum of his failure. "Listen," he started, his voice a little stronger now, trying to use that old Daniel charm. "I can explain. It was a mistake, a huge mistake. I was under pressure. Those people, they were going to kill me, man. I had to sell. I had to get the money." He was begging. The great Daniel Thorne, the tech genius, was begging me. It was a sweet sound. "The people you borrowed from?" I asked. "The ones who wanted their money back after you lost it in a stupid, early trade, the one you tried to cover up by erasing your best friend." His face went white. He knew. He knew I knew the whole ugly truth. How do you know that?" he whispered. "I built the Oracle, Daniel," I said, my voice low and steady. "I know how to look at the world's secrets. You taught me how to look at the business side, and I taught myself how to look at the shadows. I spent 3 years watching you. I know your passwords, your bank codes, and the name of the secretary you met in Paris." He dropped to his knees just like in the original story, but this time it was different. It wasn't just sadness. It was pure, raw terror. "Please," he cried, grabbing my pant leg. Please, I'll give it all back, the money, the company, I'll tell them the truth, I'll tell them you built it, we can start over, we can be partners again. I looked down at him, the man who was my brother, the man who had murdered my life. You don't have anything to give back, Daniel, I said. I took it all. I am the one who crashed your systems. I am the one who leaked your secrets. I am the one who emptied your accounts. He looked up, his eyes full of a sudden, terrible understanding. Ashes, he whispered, the virus, you built it. Yes, I said, I called it ashes, because everything you built was going to turn to dust, just like you did to me. He started to shake his head, a fast, crazy movement. But why didn't you just tell the police? Why didn't you just take the money? We could have worked it out. Because you said it was nothing personal, Daniel, I said, kicking his hand away gently. But it was all personal. You didn't just steal my code, you stole my trust, you stole my future, and you thought I would just move on. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small, silver flash drive. It was the size of my thumb. This, I said, holding it up so the single living room light caught the metal, this is everything. Daniel stared at it, his eyes wide with a new kind of hope. He thought it was the money, he thought it was the code for ashes. What is it? He asked, his voice thick with snot and tears. It's your life, Daniel, I said. It's a copy of the Oracle's final, perfect code. It's the only clean copy left in the world. It's the proof that you were a genius, that you built something great. It's the key to getting your life back. He reached for it, his hand shaking like a leaf. And, I continued, my voice dropping to a whisper, it also has a recording of you just now telling me everything, telling me about the debt, about Mr. Silas, about how you tricked me into signing the papers. It's the proof that you are a criminal, a fraud, and a terrible friend. I watched his face. The hope and the terror fought a terrible war right there on his skin. If you give this to the police, I said, you might save yourself from the worst charges, you might get a lighter sentence, you might get to keep a little bit of your dignity. He was breathing hard, his eyes fixed on the flash drive. He was thinking, he was calculating. The old Daniel was still in there trying to find a way to win. Give it to me, he begged. Please, I need it. I took a step back, moving toward the huge stone fireplace in the living room. A small, sad fire was burning inside, just a few logs trying to fight the cold. You said you thought I would move on, I said. You thought I would just forget, you thought I was weak. I looked at the flash drive one last time. It was the last piece of our shared dream, the last piece of the boy I used to be. I dropped it. It fell with a tiny clink onto the stone hearth, then rolled right into the heart of the fire. Daniel screamed. It was a sound of pure, broken pain. He lunged forward, trying to reach into the flames, but it was too late. The plastic casing melted instantly. The metal inside turned black and began to smoke. The data, the code, the confession, everything was gone. No, no, he yelled, pulling his hand back from the heat. He looked at me, his eyes now full of a cold, empty hate that finally matched my own. You destroyed it, he said, his voice flat. You destroyed everything. Yes, I said, now you have nothing, no proof of your genius, no proof of your crime. You are just a man who lost $50 million and his wife. You are a ghost. I turned and walked toward the door. Wait, he yelled, what about you? They'll find you, they'll know you did this. I stopped at the door, my hand on the cold metal handle. Let them, I said, I'm done running, I'm done watching, I got what I wanted. I opened the door and stepped out into the cold, thin rain. I didn't look back. The drive down the hill was slow. The rain was washing the city clean, but it couldn't wash away the dirt I had made. I didn't go back to my dark apartment. I drove to a quiet place by the river. I parked the car and just sat there watching the water move. I had won. The revenge was complete. Daniel was broken. He was alone. He was facing a long, dark future with no money, no friends, and no way to prove he was ever anything more than a common thief. But the victory felt like a cold, empty room. I had spent 3 years building a weapon. I had spent 3 years living in the shadows. I had become the thing I hated, a ghost, a destroyer. I looked at the clock on the car's dashboard. It was 2:05 a.m. The time was moving again. I pulled out my old phone, the one I hadn't used in years. I had one last thing to do. I called the police. My voice was calm. I have information about the Daniel Thorne case, I said. I know where he is and I know what happened to the money. I gave them the address of the mansion. I told them my name, the name I thought didn't matter anymore. I'll be waiting, I said, and I hung up. I sat there for 12 more minutes. The air was cold, but I felt warm. It was the warmth of a finished job. At 2:17 a.m., the clock in my head finally stopped ticking. It was the exact moment the sirens started. They were far away at first, just a faint sound in the city, but they were coming for me. I closed my eyes and thought about Daniel. I thought about the time we were 10 and he broke his arm falling out of a tree. I carried him 3 blocks home and he never stopped thanking me. I thought about the day we started the company, shaking hands in the dusty garage, promising to be rich and famous together. I thought about the email. It's nothing personal, just business. He had made a choice. He chose money and fear over friendship and honor. And I had made a choice. I chose revenge over peace. The sirens were close now. I could see the flashing blue and red lights bouncing off the wet buildings. I got out of the car and stood by the river. The water was black and fast. A police car pulled up, then another, then a third. A man in a uniform got out. He looked tired. "Are you?" he started. "Yes," I said, "I'm the one you're looking for." He walked toward me slowly. He didn't pull his gun. He just looked at me, a quiet man standing by the river in the rain. "You called us," he said. "Yes," I said, "I have a story to tell." I looked back at the city, at the lights that covered the hill where Daniel's dark mansion stood. I had destroyed a monster, but I had become a ghost. The officer put his hand on my arm. It was a gentle touch. "Let's go," he said. I didn't fight, I didn't run, I just walked with him. The clock in my head was silent. The 2:17 a.m. moment was finally over. I had traded my freedom for a moment of justice, a dark, terrible justice that cost me everything. But as I got into the back of the police car, I looked up at the sky. The rain had stopped. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt a tiny, cold breath of air that wasn't full of hate. I was finally free of Daniel. The police station was bright and loud. They asked me questions for hours. I told them everything. About the oracle, about Daniel's debt, about the papers I signed, and about ashes. I told them how I watched him, how I planned, and how I finally broke him. They wrote it all down. They didn't look surprised. They had already seen the evidence from the leaks. They knew Daniel was a fraud. I just gave them the final piece of the puzzle. They asked me about the flash drive. "What was on it?" the detective asked. "Everything," I said. "The proof of his genius and the proof of his crime. I burned it." The detective looked at me for a long time. "Why?" "Because I didn't want him to have a way out," I said. "I wanted him to be nothing. I wanted him to be a ghost just like he made me." The detective nodded slowly. He understood. It wasn't about the law anymore. It was about a broken heart and a terrible need for balance. I signed the papers. I was charged with crimes too, hacking, destroying property, but I didn't care. The price was worth it. As they led me away, I thought about the 9,000 words I had just written in my head. A long, dark story of a dream built on rust and a revenge made of fire. I was the ghost who finally came home. The clock was silent. The game was over. I had lost my name, my freedom, and my best friend, but I had won my peace, and that, I thought, was worth more than $50 million.